free, calculated, limited, and login. In this module, we are going to see how we can set up the fields to be limited, calculated, or free. Which fields are affected by these options? Free affects the vast majority of fields. The only limitation here will be the type of field. The rest of the options affect the following type of terms: one-line text, date, date and time, whole number, and decimal number. A lot of the terms have a specific configuration options that change the way you interact with them. For example, a library term can be configured to allow us to limit the labels, the size of the files, the version. In this module, we are going to pay attention to the free, limited, and calculated options, also the login. Let's see some examples. Let's see all of the different ones in more detail. What is the free option for? So that we can introduce data freely according to the type of term and its configuration. For example, that is editable. If a field is editable and has no limitation, it's a free field. The only limitation would be the type of data. So for example, if it's a date type of field, we will only be allowed to add a date, obviously. Let's see the characteristics of the calculated ones. What is a calculated option for? It is used when we want that the terms get filled out automatically based on data from other fields. These fields are not editable but read only. Here, for example, we have the date of birth and current date fields. Based on these values, on this value and this one, we will get the right value here. Okay, so taking into account the date of birth and the current date, we get to know the right age. We also have here the reference, okay, and again is another calculated field that takes into account the key and this field as well, and is a composition. We will see it later on. In the group of fields, okay, calculation can be fixed or variable. If we select fixed value, when I create the register and add a value, that value will stay the same even though I close the form and open it again later. It will always have the same value. If I select variable and the price, for example, changes, when we open the form again, that calculation will vary. We can select fixed or variable in a group of fields. Let's see now what is the limited option for. It is used to compel the users to introduce data to fulfill some predefined limits. To do this, we should indicate that it is a limited field and configure it in a way so they meet the desired limits. Usually, to have a proper database, we must try that all the data we introduce is in the correct format. To try to ensure the data introduced in the form is correct, we use the limited fields. Here we have the available cache and make a transfer one, okay? And for example, I want to disable any transfers for a higher amount than the available cache. So I want that I can only add an amount here that is always lower than the available cache we have. So we set up this make a transfer field as limited, so the value is never higher than the available cache. We also have the book a hotel field, okay, and obviously we don't want the field to accept dates in the past, so the limit here will be that the date introduced must be a later date than the current one. And the last example we have is the email. And here we want the field to only allow text with an email form. These limited fields help our users to avoid making mistakes while adding the data. What is the login option for? If we want the users to introduce a login and that the system checks if it is available or not, we can use a one-line text field and indicate that we want this field to allow it. When we set up the field as a login, if we click on login, the system will check if it is available or not and let us know. Let's go now to the application. If I go to my tasks and start a process, teacher, and I go to limits and calculation. So let's see the different limits and how they work. So for example, in lim_who, which is a whole number, okay, I'm gonna add 600. And as we can see, we have a warning saying value must be between 1 and 500. So let's change it to 450, and it should be fine. Okay, now we cannot see the numbers because we have selected the option hidden. We will see that in a minute. Lim text, I just need to add a text, yeah. But again, we have a warning window to let us know the limits of the field. So it must start and end with a symbol, contain AP, capital letters, lowercase, and be 7 to 9 characters long. So if we have all that here, it will work. In this one, we obviously have to add a URL address and it will be fine. We go now to settings. Okay, and we see the configuration of the lim whole number. We can see here that is hidden. We cannot change anything from here, okay, as you can see. But if we go to attributes, options, and we change dictionary and we change it to limited, click on the pencil icon, we can see that here we can, for example, deselect hidden so we can see the numbers and we can change the values. So I'm going to put 5,000 instead of 500. I'm going to change the warning. So if I go here, I'm going to change the warning to okay, accept, save and exit, and save and exit. As we said before, we can change the configuration from the dictionary of terms, which means the form will inherit all those options and the configuration, or we can change it just here in the form, which means it will only be for this form. Okay? So let's go now to, let's save it first, and let's go back to the process. Limits and calculations. And now, if I add a number, yeah, as we can see, it's not hidden anymore, so we can see the numbers and the warning message has changed. Right, let's see the different limits in the form configuration. So let's see, for example, the text. So in here, okay, we just have configured all the things and all the limits, basically, that we want to have. So we have start with the symbol, end up with the symbol, okay, the length, it has to be between 7 and 9 characters. We want to contain AP. We can choose here some conditions, so we can say it must contain or it must not contain. So we added must contain uppercase and lowercase. Okay, and we also chose that it must contain numbers, okay? if we added a term here and pressing proceed, we could check if all the limits are complied or not. Okay, as we said before, we cannot change it here. Okay, I can either change it from here, change it to limited, okay, or just go to the dictionary if I want to change the inherited settings. Okay, now let's go back to execution. And let's see this one now. So if I add here China, for example, yeah, we have a warning again, and it says it must contain the word Europe or USA. Okay, so obviously we'll have to, if we put USA or Europe, it's fine. Lim date, it must be a previous date to the actual one. So we can put 1st of May, okay? And as we can see, as soon as we put it here, as we added the data, the deliver date came out. It was automatically calculated, okay? And it has just added 10 more days. So let's go now to structure, dictionary, and terms. Okay, and let's see the configuration of some of these terms from the dictionary. So let's add lim in the filter, and we will get all of them. So let's go, for example, to this one. Okay, we can see it's a one-line text, and if we go to the value, we can see that it's limited. Okay, here, if I select option selection, a window opens with all the options. Okay, if I select regular expressions edition, we can see that we have guide here, and it's where we have the most common regular expressions. Okay, so here obviously is to add JavaScript code. Okay, so if we go to guide, we have kind of some common ones. Okay, we used this one, this option in our one. Okay, but if we wanted to, I don't know, that the phrase began with this, we should add this code. Okay, there are examples, but if we know JavaScript code, we can add whatever we like. Okay, from here we could check if the term we just studied is correct or not. Okay, so if we add, I don't know, China and check, it says is incorrect. If we add Europe and check, proceed, it says correct data. Okay, we can also, I just forgot, we can also here, okay, change the warning. Let's go to check another one. For example, lim date. Okay, so let's go here. So here we select automatic. Okay, we just get the current date. I will go here and select a variation, for example, decrease and the number of days. Okay, I want it to decrease. It could be increase as well. Yeah. And here again, it will be just to check that the values are correct. Again, we have the warnings here to add a little message. And if we go to dictionary, for example, it allows me to choose a field from the process panel. Okay, so we could choose one of these fields. Okay. This way, instead of the current date, here we will have the field from the panel we want, and the variation will consider the value in that field. Okay, so this variation will consider this panel. We're just gonna leave it as it was before. Okay, save and exit. And let's see, I don't know, another one, for example, this one. So if we go to the value, limited, we can see, okay, that's why we have to add this, because it was selected here. If it was email, then obviously it will have to have the form of an email. Also, we can have it hidden if we wanted to. And here, okay, you could have the form of the Spanish ID. Okay, so we'll have, the system will check that there are 8 numbers and a lead sound is correct, and the Chile one as well. Okay, let's leave it as it was before. And save and exit. Remember that I can set up the limits in the dictionary, but I can also modify them from the actual form. So let's go back to the process. Once we have learned about the limits, we are going to see how to set up calculations and how they work. For example, we have here delivery date, and as we can see, we cannot add any data here. And this is because it's a non-editable field. This means it's a calculated one. So if I go here and add a date, we can see that it gets automatically filled out. It just added 10 days to the date I added here. In description, we can see that some information has been added. We will see this later on. Now, if we go to settings and we see this term, delivery date, we can see how we configure it before. The unit is natural days, okay? And I put count from, so we selected from field and we chose the field that it was going to take into account, okay? So that's why when I added a date in this field, it just counted 10 natural days, okay? And fill it out automatically. So it's quite straightforward. Okay, another one would be this one amount. First, let's see it in execution. Again, we can see we cannot add any data here. Again, it's a calculation one, and it takes into account these two. So if I go to quantity at 2 and a price of 50, we have the calculation automatically done for us. Okay, so 2 for the price of 50 makes a total amount of 100. So we go to settings, back to settings where we were. Okay, we can see options. Okay, and we can see that is a calculated one. Okay, so here, okay, we have to configure this kind of formula. Okay, although I have it here, I'm gonna do it again so you can see it. So basically it's taking into account these two fields in the panel. Okay, so we have to find, we go here, okay, we have to find the fields we want to, and we have quantity, okay, and then the multiplication symbol, and then we need the other field, which was price. Okay, so quantity multiplied by price gives me the amount. I'm gonna delete it because I just wanted you to see it. Okay, save and exit. Okay, we also have description, which I mentioned before. Okay, and it's a composition. Okay, So as you can see, it gets filled out with the new login, notified, okay, the delivery date. So we will learn how to do compositions later on. Okay, I just wanted you to know. And let's go and see the last thing now, which would be the login. Okay, so if I add here a login that I know it already exists, like Paco Vera, which I know it exists, and I click on check, okay, it says login unavailable. Okay, it lets us know that that is not possible. So if we delete it and add a new one, like David one, okay, and check availability, we can see that it's fine now. As we have seen before, when I added here Paco Vera, I have new login Paco Vera. Now the description has automatically been updated and it says David. That's because of the composition we just configured and I just show you. Okay, now we are ready to set up all kinds of fields, free, limited and calculated. Thank you.